we use all of our senses to try and create theatre. And that's not just using the five senses that we sort of all know about. We actually have, I think, around 33 senses. Everyone can have a theatrical experience. We might communicate differently, we might express ourselves differently, but that doesn't matter because the creativity is like a universal language. The creative world is unlimited.
Hi, and welcome back to Creative Minds Shaping the Future. I'm your host, Emma Palastanga. I'm an educator, author, and now podcast producer, curious to discuss a range of views on creativity and curriculum. In Series 2, we explore creative expression and why it is important for all of us. Claire Sundin has worked as a professional actor across the UK, in the West End and New York. She's the artistic director of Embracing Arts, making high quality theatre experiences interactive and accessible to all. Embracing Arts is a theatre company dedicated to creating work for children with special educational needs and also those with life-limiting conditions. Interactive multi-sensory shows, parties and workshops are tailored to the unique needs of each audience and use storytelling, song, music and puppetry to entertain, engage and educate. They're delivered by a team of experienced professional actors, supported by fantastic puppets. Their shows are designed for children who are often excluded from experiencing and enjoying the arts due to barriers they face through disability. I'm delighted that Claire has joined us today to share her views on why creative expression is important, especially for individuals with special educational needs, including those with profound and multiple learning difficulties. So Claire, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here today. We're going to dive straight in, Claire, with why do you believe creative expression is important for everyone?
Oh, I mean, where do you begin? I just think it's such an important part of life because I believe everyone has creativity in them. Everyone displays creativity through different mediums, through the way they engage, even. And so it's such a huge part of who we are as people, and being able to sort of tap into that more and emphasize that as a way of communication, expression. The possibilities are endless, and I just think the freedom that it gives you is just such a wonderful space to be in.
Digging a bit deeper, what do you feel drama in particular brings to the curriculum, especially for those with profound and multiple learning difficulties?
Again, I'm going to use this word freedom quite a lot, but I think when I remember back to my school days, and I was quite an academic person, but I always felt there was a bit of a constraint there with certain subjects. And I feel with drama, that freedom, that ability to interpret it in your own way, there's so much more development of sort of nothing's right, nothing's wrong. It's allowing people to be themselves. And again, particularly this works well, I think, for young people labeled PMLD, because you meet them where they are and you engage with them on their terms, and you learn so much more about those young people by being creative. I always say when I work in schools that I'm like a little sensory detective, because I'm trying to work out what my hook is with each person, because we might communicate differently, we might express ourselves differently, but that doesn't matter because the creativity is like a universal language that we can all understand, or we can learn to understand through play, through expression, through expressive arts. It just gives us a whole world to tap into that is often much more limited, especially for those who are labeled PMLD. The creative world is unlimited for them like it is for everybody else. And so we can really use that drama, sensory theatre, which is my specialism, to connect. And that's what it is. It's connection. It's how do we make connection? How do we engage with each other? How do we meet people where they are? And how do we find this kind of shared language that doesn't need to be a spoken language?
I think that's lovely. So much of what you said there, but particularly what stood out for me was that creativity is a universal language. I
Absolutely.
love that. I've got goosebumps repeating it back to you. And I think it's so crucial. Just because somebody can't communicate with words
Yeah.
doesn't mean they're a non-communicator or they're non-communicative.
Absolutely not. And even nowadays, because the language around disability is constantly changing and we're constantly making sure that we're at the forefront of that, terms like non-verbal, for example, we're not even using that terminology now. We're using non-speaking because someone is non-speaking, not speaking words, that doesn't mean they're not verbal. They're making
Very
sounds.
true.
We're communicating, in our own way. And so, yeah, we're always making sure that we're not sort of marginalizing anybody by using any sort of phrasing that we think, actually, no, you're not nonverbal. You're making a sound. We're going to communicate through your language.
And I think anybody who's had experience of working with children who are non-speaking
Mhm.
will guarantee that they are not non-verbal.
Absolutely not.
I can picture the little girl that I worked with before with your sort I want to say sister company, if you like, and linked company, Frozen Light. She was, yeah, very verbal. And it was really interesting. One of the activities that we did with her, and I'd like to delve a little bit deeper with you with the sensory theatre. But one example I have is it was during COVID actually. So we had the theatre production was on a YouTube link that we dialed into, and there was a box of there was jelly, there was an old book, which I love the smell of old books. There
Fantastic.
was a handheld fan. There were some petals. Now it's the petals, they were sort of silk petals,
Yeah.
and we held them up above her head, and her eye tracking was amazing because we repeated this activity over and over. It was one of her favorites. So we lifted these petals up and we dropped them onto her face, and her smile and her eyes just lit up. So we repeated that over and over again, and it's a memory that sticks in my mind all these years later. So yeah, it has a massive impact.
That's beautiful. And it's such a lovely way of connecting, isn't it, as
Yeah,
well?
yes. I think you're right. That's exactly what it was, a moment of real gorgeous connection and
Yeah.
joy as
And a
well.
shared moment,
Yeah.
you're sharing that and making those memories together, which is just, there's you can't put a price on that, can you? So,
No, absolutely. So I said we'd delve a bit deeper into the sensory theatre. Perhaps not everybody's heard about it. I've given a few clues there, but
sure.
can you give a bit more information on that for us?
Yeah, so we use all of our senses to try and create theatre. And that's not just using the five senses that we sort of all know about. We actually have, I think, around 33 senses.
Wow.
But we really look at trying to connect with people and meet them where they are. And so that means if they are very visual learners or, visual engagers, then we'll use lots of visual props and cues. But if we're a more tactile person, we will use different textures. If we are more about movement, we'll use more kinesthetic approaches to be able to engage. And so it's really tailoring what you're doing to your audience or your class or your individual that you're working with, and not just using the spoken word, not using text. We might use symbols. So we're a Makaton aware company, so we sign, we use symbols as well. But it's even sort of deeper than that. It's just very much about using vibrations, sound. If I've got a young person who's really interested in vibration and sound, I might sing. And once I've developed my relationship with them, and obviously with consent, they might place their hand under my chin or on my throat to hear the vibration of my larynx and my vocal cords. And it's really delving right into the whole body, the whole sensory spectrum, I would say,
Mm.
in order to be able to find a connection. And there's lots of companies doing it now, which is fantastic because
Mm.
actually, a few years ago, sort of 10, 15 years ago, when we started doing this, it was very unknown. It was an unknown world. Whereas now you have companies like Frozen Light, Concrete Youth, Oily Cart, who've been going for a very long time actually. But we're all learning and developing this method of communication, engagement, sparking creativity, but all through this sort of, it's not even unconventional anymore, really. But it's not your conventional sitting in a theater and watching a show, which I love. But as we know, there are barriers for some people in that, and we want to break that down so that everyone can have a theatrical experience and
Mm.
a more participatory experience as well, so that there's no fourth wall in what we do. Basically, we're very connected to our audience. I don't know
Yeah.
if I've explained sensory theatre there at all. I've just talked passionately about it.
No, I think you have. You said, the 33 senses. I mean, yeah, I wasn't aware that we had 33, but I guess like you're saying, just awareness of your surroundings, of each other, the connection, not only using different props, like I explained, the jelly and the old book and the fan,
Yeah.
and putting the child's hand on your throat so they could feel the vibrations. It's very, very inclusive. I think there's no doubt about that. And I'm thinking when I first spoke to you and introduced you, I said about children with special educational needs and profound and multiple learning difficulties. I can see that this would also work really well for those learners who are neurodivergent.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I literally worked in a school yesterday where I worked with 7 different classes, and there was a whole mix, of different groups of learners, lots of neurodiversity. And the great thing about this sensory world is that you just tailor it to the
Mm.
group that you're working with. And so a lot of the groups that I was working with who were autistic were very chatty, very happy to talk to me, asking me lots of questions, didn't want to sit for long. Fine. We
Mm.
won't sit. We'll move. We'll bounce. We'll take movement breaks. It's about making sure that you're still able to engage with me, but in your way, in the way that suits you. I'm not going to force, I always say, I'm not here to torture you. I'm never going to force you to stay, even. Everyone has the option to leave my sessions if they want. But also, to just play as well. So it's about creativity, but it's about play, because that, I think, is what is at the heart of creativity, you
Yeah,
know?
100%. I don't think you can be creative if you're not prepared to play.
No. And also, you can't give yourself any sort of limitations. Obviously, there are certain boundaries and there are certain things we have to put in place. The most important thing to me is that everyone is safe, that we have consent for everything that we do. But at the same time, a session could go anywhere. And I love that, because I'm not sort of, when I worked a lot with in mainstream schools, I would work for companies where I had almost a script, and
Yeah.
I had a certain amount of content that I would have to get through. And it's very pressured to try and fit a lot of that content in within an hour, though all of it is hugely valuable, of course. But actually, what I love about working with different neurotypes and different disabilities is that I just go, oh, throw that out the window. Let's just enjoy this moment. And if this moment wants to be extended, we'll extend it. We'll go with it. Likewise, if I know that something's not working, let's cut and run from that and move on to the next thing. It's much, again, freer. There's so
Mm.
much more freedom.
Absolutely. That sounds like that word is key to everything you do, isn't it? Freedom and also connection.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm interested to understand a bit more about how did you get involved in the dramatic arts?
Mm.
What sort of impact has it had on your own life? And what led you down this particular route of sensory theatre?
Sure. So I've always performed since I was tiny. Used to, my mum would tell stories of me making the relatives sit down. Well, I'm going to sing you a song now. And I would make up the song on the spot. My mum was like, I don't know where these words were coming from. You just go off on, your own little a cappella song. So I've always loved that. And drama's always been a part of my life since I was very young. I would join, I was in choirs, I was in drama clubs, I was in all the school plays. And so then when I left school, I decided I would like to pursue an acting career. So I went to drama school. I went to the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts, LIPA, um, trained there for 3 years, had a fantastic time, then decided to move to London. So I'm actually from Newcastle originally, though I've been down south for so long that I think I've lost my Geordiness. But I moved down south. I moved to London, and I worked as a professional actress for many many years. I did lots of amazing things. It was hard as well. It was a jobbing. I'm a jobbing actor, so I would do other work in between, and a lot of that came in the form of facilitating, and particularly through drama. So I kept that alongside my career the whole time. But then when I was on a show in, oh goodness, it must have been about 2007 or 2008, I met the co-founder of Embracing Arts, and that's Sue Appleby, who is still very much a professional actress and is phenomenal. And we just started chatting about this world of theatre, and the fact that lots of people don't always have the opportunity to access it. And she had actually been chatting to a palliative care nurse who
Mhm.
had said about young people in hospices and how they really struggled to find work and performances that they could either attend, just because of the actual medical
Mhm.
journey that you have to go on and everything equipment you have to take with you, but also then bringing those shows into the hospice. They felt it was a bit sort of let's have a visit from the people in the panto, which is lovely, but it's a panto that you might not be able to go and see because of your medical needs. So
Yes.
we thought, well, that's crazy. We need to bring things into these venues. So that's how we started the company. We were called Christmas for Kids to begin with, which is our Christmas project, which we've been doing ever since we started the company. But we just decided to take some storytelling and some puppetry and some songs, and we started in hospices. And then as we grew and realized that this was really quite successful, and people were really enjoying it, I started doing a lot more research, and trying to understand this world of how I can connect with different people, different neurotypes. And it's just kind of slowly developed and grown and grown and grown. We became a charity in 2016, which meant that we could then fund a lot of our work, which was really important because, again, that's another barrier to the arts. So we wanted to tear that away, the financial barrier. And then when we hit COVID, of course, everybody panicked because of course, the sensory world. I mean, it's all about being there in person. It's about working with people, one to one, using intensive interaction. But then we realized, oh, we can't do any of that. So a bit like Frozen Light did, and many other theatre companies, we created some digital work as well that people could watch an episode or a short film, and it would be facilitated by the people in their bubble, the people in their home. And we would give either ideas or a bit like Frozen Light, you could send props over. So we started doing that. And so now what's amazing is that we have both of these things. So we continue our Christmas project in person. We have our digital output as well. That means we can connect with so many more people. And then we develop these parties and workshop side of what we're doing, because we were like, we can't just do this at Christmas time. It's needed all year round. And so now we work in schools, we work in hospices, I've delivered parties in the hallway of someone's house because they wanted an inclusive party experience with an entertainer who understood the needs and wants of their young person. And then they felt confident that bringing me into their home, we could create a lovely party atmosphere for that young person. And so every time it's just growing and growing, but at a rate that is manageable, because I would never want to dilute, I would never want to franchise or anything like that. I want to stay in control of it because it's so important to me that we keep those lovely connections and that work and the growing of sensory theatre at a manageable rate that everyone can enjoy.
Yeah, I can hear that passion in your voice as well. It's so lovely.
I
And
love it.
it's really lovely to know that there are so many different companies now. I want to use your term, embracing the arts.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
is really lovely for everybody. It's very inclusive. And like you say, you're meeting everybody's needs, everybody where their needs are, rather than trying to ask people to conform to what society may expect. So,
Absolutely. It's
yeah.
it's it's so important. It's so important to meet people where they're at and work out. It's my job to work out how I communicate with you. It's not your job to communicate to me. I'll do the work. That's fine. And then we'll open up a dialogue in our own way, you know?
I think there's some really rich resources there for listeners to think about using, perhaps even in their own classrooms. And I'm thinking mainstream as well as special schools. So we can go online and access those online resources for the
Absolutely.
and the
Absolutely.
ideas as well. You said there's ideas as to how to bring those experiences to life if we're using a digital resource.
Yeah, so when we put out our digital show, we send out, and it's all on our website, so people go and find us because there's a whole myriad of stuff up there. But when we're doing our Christmas project, we send a digital resource pack where we work with different sensory practitioners. So we partner up with lots of different people because we're all learning from each other as well, you know, and we've got people who have much more different specialisms to me. So story massage, you know, BSL, Makaton, an absolute plethora, thank goodness now, of different opportunities. And we share that with the people who sign up to our digital show. And it's all stuff that can be done at home. It's not specialist equipment. It's not spending hundreds of pounds. And that's not to say that some of this equipment is not absolutely amazing and stunning. But I like to use, like you said earlier on, about the hand fan and some petals. You know, I like to keep it simple. I like it to be things that people can find in their own homes or
Mm.
at least get their hands on for a very small amount of money.
Yeah, well, that sounds brilliant for not just teachers in the classroom, but also individuals.
Yeah,
So thank you very much. If you send me a link as well to your website, we'll put that in the show notes. And then, listeners, all you have to do is look at the show notes and you can access that.
that's amazing. Thank you.
Brilliant. Um, so what's your most, I mean, you've talked about lots of your drama experiences, which is great. What would you say is your most memorable drama experience, either from your own life or one that you've enjoyed delivering? And why do you think that that has stuck in your mind?
It's less so much about what I've done as a performer, though I've had, you know, a range of different shows and things that I've done, which I have really loved. But I think definitely in the capacity of what we're doing now. So there's we take our show Crimble Sense on tour, which is a sensory exploration of all things festive and Christmassy.
Mhm.
And it's not even my delivery, it's the team, but I direct the show. So I watched the show of my team, three performers delivering this amazing sensory engagement show. And a young person was so excited. I actually thought she was going to explode. She was just having this everything. She was stimming, she was jumping, she was just so happy. And because we don't ever perform on a stage, we always perform on the same level as our audience. She just joined the performers. And I mean, like she lit one of my performers was in a little sort of green tutu and she's very colorful. She looked like a little elf. And this young girl had decided that that person is my best friend and I will be staying with that person. And I think my performer did pretty much the entire show with this young girl who must have been, I don't know, maybe 8 years old, um, either attached to her or very, very close proximity to her for the whole performance. And it was gorgeous. And she was having such a wonderful time. And because she was almost part of the performance team and she was enjoying that as well. And then we went back to the same school the following year and the exact thing happened again. Amazing. This young girl was like, brilliant. I know what's going to happen now. I'm going to get involved. I'm going to jump in. And again, became part of the world of the performance, which is amazing. Another thing that's happened actually, which was really beautiful, was a young girl who is neurodiverse was really scared of puppets.
Mhm.
And not in the show we're doing at the moment, but previously we've used a lot of puppetry in our shows. But we realized that actually a lot of young people who are autistic, they like to know the workings of everything.
Uh-huh.
So we would start our show by explaining how we use the puppet, and that when we this is the puppet, this we're going to put our hand in the back of the puppet. When we have the puppet on our hand, this is our voice for the puppet. We really broke it down, and we performed this at the Discovery Story Centre in Stratford in East London, and they have a particular group for young people with different neurotypes and
Mhm.
disabilities. And in this performance, the girl, her parents said, you just broke down a wall there because she now loves the puppetry because she understands the world of puppetry. We then did a birthday party for this young girl, and she was performing. We were singing The Little Mermaid together. She had a mermaid tail on. I had puppets around her the whole time, and she was just, and it was a breakthrough moment. And you just think, wow, that actually was a very simple act on our part, just
Mhm.
making something, very clear about how it works so that that person can now access that world of puppetry and is no longer afraid of them anymore, which is glorious.
Wow. I guess traditionally we might have thought, oh no, we want to keep this a secret. We want it to be magical for these young people, for them to imagine what's going on. And I think there is a place for that,
Of course.
but we need to accept that those, as you've just said, who are neurodivergent might feel quite frightened by this scary creature
Yeah.
that's appeared out of nowhere that speaks like nobody else is speaking.
Yeah.
How on earth is that working? And it might, well, it did for this individual, clearly, sent them into fear and panic.
Mm.
And by removing that mystical, how does it work part, you opened up that world to joy and fun and laughter.
Yeah, you're right. You still keep the magic. There's still magic there, but you have to work for what is gonna work best for the access point, the engagement for that young person.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time in anything that I do, and I'm working with neurodiverse young people, they really do want to know how everything works. If I've got a fan in my hand, they want to take the fan and have, how does it switch on and how does it switch off? And that's great. We'll use that. And then look what I'm going to show you that it can do. I can blow these petals or confetti up in the air. That's still magic, it's still magical. You just have to work out what the story is through that, I suppose.
What's next for you, or what's next for Embracing Arts?
Well, we're always developing, we're always learning. We are developing now our CPD side of our work, so our continued professional development, because I just think it's so important that more people understand this sensory world. So I'm starting to go a lot more into specialist schools, but also mainstream schools as well, to just speak with staff, show them my sort of toolkit, though obviously I use many, many sensory props and ways to engage, but just giving that support to educators, to family members as well, about how we can play, how we can still use those techniques of engagement, how we can still educate our learners, but it's just a different pathway in. And it's, I think it's really important that we share those skills with everybody so that we can, all be making this world accessible, because it's not that difficult to do. That's the thing. If you start creating a show or a project, and access is at the fabric of it, at the core of it, and at the heart of it, it's a lot easier than taking something that is, already in existence, a particular, I don't know, show or story, and then thinking, oh, let me backtrack and let me work out how I make it accessible. It's much easier to do it right from the beginning, and it's just about awareness.
I think that sounds wonderful. Just building that awareness, different entry points as you referred to earlier, and the accessibility for all. And I've been thinking as we've been talking throughout this chat that we've been having, that actually, yes, there's so much that could be used in mainstream education, so much could be used by individuals in their home, so much could be applied in special education provision, um, much of which they will probably already do, but will enhance their approach as well.
I think especially now for mainstream, we're getting such a high amount of numbers of young people who are either waiting for a diagnosis,
Yeah.
batting down doors trying to get a diagnosis, waiting for an EHCP, and maybe not always should be in the school that they're in, but let's make it that school life easier for them,
Yeah.
please. And let's try and find the ways that we can connect. And I know that that's hard, and I know, especially with the numbers in classes, that that's hugely demanding and difficult, and I have the utmost respect for all teachers. But if I can help with a few little toolkits that can break down those little barriers, or, find those hooks in, or entry points, which is such a good phrase, then that's what I want to do. And I want to make sure everybody has the access to that. It's really important.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. And I'm thinking as you're talking there, any Senkos listening, that might be really useful for you guys to get in touch and experience the CPD firsthand, and then roll that out to the individuals in your school. If there is a limited budget, which so often there is,
Yeah.
then perhaps if the Senkos could at least see that from yourself, and then roll out some of those things that could be used every day in the classroom. I know, for example, I use puppets in my mainstream classroom from time to time, generally with the younger children, but not always. And they absolutely love it.
It's a great way to connect, and it's also, especially when, if I'm coming into your space a lot of the time. I'm coming into your classroom. I'm coming into your, where you go for respite in a hospice. That's familiar to you, and that's your safe space. And I'm not a safe person to begin with, because I'm a stranger. And so, using things like puppetry actually can be quite a nice little conduit as a way of making that connection. We do actually try as much as we can to send sort of preparation documentation, so sort of access documents, a photo of me with a smiley
Yeah.
face, so people know what to expect. It's trying to just make everyone feel safe and comfortable, but at the same time, it's an opportunity. We can educate through this, we can challenge through this. Let's not always put those young people in little boxes where we go, well, this person doesn't like this, that they absolutely won't like it. And I often go, can, can we just try? As long as I'm not about to hugely trigger them, cause them distress in any way, there are ways that we can try new entry points and new ways of connecting, because otherwise what happens is we just go, oh, well, this young individual, particularly with PMLD, actually, this young individual, they like nursery rhymes. Okay, great, but they may have liked nursery rhymes when they were 5 or 6,
Yeah.
and we decided that at 13 they still like nursery rhymes, and that's fine. They might still like nursery rhymes, absolutely, and great. I love a nursery rhyme, and I'm in my 40s. But, we might also want to introduce other themes, other music. It's about making sure that our young people are also allowed to develop and grow and show preference.
I was laughing because I often write down key words as guests are talking, and the word I've written down there was developing.
Yeah.
It's not getting stuck in a rut, is it? I think it would be easy to do, particularly for those children and young adults who are non-speaking.
Hmm.
So we find something that they enjoy, as you just said, when they're 5,
Hmm.
and we know it makes them happy and brings them joy, so we stick with it. But how do we know if there's other things? And I understand it could be quite frightening to rock the boat, particularly if it could trigger or cause major distress. So to have this opportunity with somebody else coming in and saying, you know what, I've tried this before with other people, it has worked, let's try it again
Yeah.
and see where we go with this. And you seem to have a very gentle, nurturing approach where you really listen to those individual needs. I'm not saying that parents don't and teachers don't, but you have a very specialist expertise. And to show some of the rest of us how that can be done sounds a really exciting opportunity for those individuals. So I hope that listeners will get in touch, get some ideas and try them out. And it would be really lovely to hear from people once they've had the experience with yourselves, what those young people made of it and how they enjoyed it, or what the practitioners have used in their own classrooms as a result of your CPD.
No, absolutely. I think it's, and the possibilities are endless, which is great. I'm still learning. I don't profess to be the fountain of all knowledge in this sensory world. I'm learning. I'm learning from other practitioners. I'm learning from other theatre companies. I think we've got to keep our minds open and we've got to, embrace
Mm,
all of those different options and senses and entry points and hooks. All of that is so important.
completely. Thank you. Who else passionate about the arts would you like to hear on Creative Mind Shaping the Future and why?
I think the more people who are in this field that I work in, the better. I think I mean, there's a practitioner who I fangirl over, Dr. Joanna Grace, who is very much a fountain of knowledge of working with individuals labeled PMLD. I've learnt so much from her and reading her books and attending conferences all about the senses and all about the theory behind why the practical arts things that we do and the creative exploration, why it works. I understand that a lot more now. I almost feel like I went about it the wrong way. I started do all the doing and thought this works, but I don't know why it works. And now I know why it works, and that means I can develop things further. So she would be an absolute joy to have on your podcast. But I think yeah, other theatre companies that are doing similar things, the guys at Oily Cart, the guys at Concrete Youth. There's newer companies emerging. Moonbeams Theatre Company or a new company. I think, yeah, it's so important to get those voices out because they're all very different as well. And we're all approaching things in a slightly different way, but with the same end goal and the same mission, I suppose.
Brilliant, thank you. I wanted to dive back in actually. You said about Dr. Joanna Grace
Yeah.
and understanding why it works.
Yeah.
Can you give us listeners a little bit of an insight into why it works?
Well, I think it very much just depends on the individual that you're working with or the group that you're working with. But it's using things from the womb almost. So things like vibration, things like sort of white noise sounds. The reason that they are such a comfort to babies and young children, but then also those who are getting older but who have intellectual disabilities is because that is a safe space. That's from when we started, when we were safe in our mums' bellies. And so actually a lot of those sort of simple sounds that we might use, nursery rhymes, actually, the reason nursery rhymes work so well is, again, it's from childhood and it's a comfort. And so I use things like a nursery rhyme to say goodbye when I finish a session. So I use the tune of Row, Row, Row Your Boat, but I change the words. But works really well in our group settings, especially for those who struggle to transition because we're letting everybody know that it finishes, and we're using a repetitive sound that we've heard from our, infancy, across the board. So that's kind of one of the examples. I mean, she would be able to give you goodness knows how many. But that's a lot of the stuff that I've been learning is actually, if you grew up living by the sea, the sound of the sea might be your sort of comfort, or the sound of seagulls, because that's bringing it back to your sort of base level of understanding, even like from being in the womb. And I think a lot of that is really interesting. So when I'm working particularly with people labeled PMLD, I like to try and learn a lot about them and where they're from, and who, where they lived previously, maybe if they've moved. And it's really nice to try and get as much information about their background in their lives, so that I can again find my little hook and my entry point, and see what works.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. I understood a little bit, having worked with a little girl who had profound and multiple learning difficulties, what sensory needs were and how to begin to meet them through working closely with her mum.
Mm,
But really, today I've understood it's about safety, security, and feeling calm.
mm.
That works for so many of us, particularly children who've experienced traumas as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We work a lot in schools with children who are sort of in the SEMH
Yes.
category and have experienced trauma. And again, we find this work is a really interesting way of bringing those young people in. I did a session where actually I always check again. I check that nothing I'm going to do is going to be triggering. And we were doing an autumnal session. And I said, oh, in it, we do make like a sensory bonfire. So I want to check that none of your young people have experienced trauma related to fire.
Mm.
And the teacher actually said, actually, there is a young person who has, but I would like to expose them to this, because I think the way you're coming at it, this might be actually a really good way of addressing and starting to heal a bit of that trauma. And so they were in the session, and we basically used torches with cellophane around them to create like a little flame. And we kind of, obviously I don't go in with any flames into any schools, by the way. I'm just going to put a caveat there. But yes, we're using torches with cellophane, and each young person was given a torch, and we were sort of building up this bonfire with bits of paper and leaves and things. And this young individual was having a phenomenal time and was actively participating in building the bonfire. Then we all got blankets, and everyone was sort of cozied up together, and we were sort of singing like an indoor campfire. It was gorgeous. And this young person who, potentially could have been re-traumatized through this, actually found it as a really fun, sort of cathartic way of exploring and creating, and felt safe. And so things like that are just so incredibly important.
Unfortunately, we are reaching the end of our conversation together, but I feel I've learnt so much. I hope that listeners feel that they have too. It's been a really rich, engaging, interesting discussion together. We've talked about the freedom for everybody to be themselves, to celebrate difference, and the fact that creativity is a universal language. That gave me goosebumps when you said that. It's an inclusive, interactive process. And children access things at different entry points. So we're talking about accessibility, inclusivity, and also an interesting point about developing individuals, particularly those who are non-speaking. We might find something that they enjoy, but what's to say there's not so much more out there that they could enjoy? Let's enrich everybody's life. And the key learning point for me today was, why does sensory involvement work? And one of those elements you talked about through the work of Dr. Joanna Grace was to do with the safety of the womb. So those white noise sounds, the warmth, the coziness, and actually that works for all of us. Thanks again for coming along. Really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but thank you. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
I hope Claire's episode has given you an insight on just how inclusive theatre can be if we just tap into our senses. In the next episode, I speak with Karen Greaves, a children's writer, tutor, and workshop leader. Here she is with a few words.
Creative writing is important in schools because I think it empowers children. It gives you, because if you write something, you've got ownership of it. You know, what happens is because it's what you want to happen. And again, I think it then encourages very divergent thinking because you think, oh, let's try this. Oh, let's try that. Oh, let's try the other. And before you know it, you've got a whole springboard of different ideas. There are reading and writing opportunities just from everything around you. Our world is full of wonders. You know, it's like you pass a postbox on the street. Thousands and thousands of people have posted letters in it. Who are they? Or you pass a statue. What might that statue say? If it could make a comment on all the things that it's seen because of all the things that have happened underneath it.
If you're following this podcast from the start, I hope you've enjoyed listening to Series 1. If you're a new listener, welcome and thank you for joining us. In Series 1, we asked, does creativity have a place in education? In Series 2, we explore creative expression and why it is important for us all. In this series, I speak to painters, sculptors, musicians and dancers, to name a few creative disciplines. I already have more fantastic guests lined up for Series 3 and 4, where I'll be talking with inspiring individuals with a range of experience. If this sounds like you, maybe you have a view on creative thinking or creative expression, please get in touch by following me at ACPC4A, the number 4, on X, or Emma Palastanga on LinkedIn to connect. There are many ways you can support the show for free, and it's much appreciated. Share with your contacts, rate the show, or leave a review. If you like, you can buy me a virtual coffee to help with the costs of the podcast platform. Please follow this podcast so that you can stay up to date on the release of each episode. Thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of Creative Minds Shaping the Future.